Science Fashion Movie Reviews and More Worldwide TV Network, WomenOnTV.tv, iTunes 4247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, and iHeartRadio and all platforms around the world on this. So I look forward to doing this show because guess what? Who are you and where are you coming from, David?
Hello, my name is David Roboti. I'm from Yonkers, New York, and I'm currently promoting my book, the memoir that I wrote called How I Lost My Mind and Found Myself.
I love that title because everybody's actually kind of going through that, aren't they? When did you, do you have a copy of your book around with you so I can see it at all?
Yes, hold on. A copy. There you go.
I like that. I'm old school. I'm always about a hard copy of a book because when I'm on different shows, there's a lot of people who like me are more traditional, and I don't mind reading the PDF if I'm on a plane or something like that. But it's just there's nothing like the old fashioned picking up, having that hard copy. If you say, "Oh, that book looks interesting," I still prefer that. What about you?
I actually agree with you. And you know what's even interesting? When I was writing this book, I found that my thought pattern process was so different when I was writing with paper and pen, as opposed to just writing on my phone, like using my iPhone and going in through words. And it was so weird. I felt more creative when I had the pen and paper rather than writing on a device or like a laptop. So, and it's a great. I think this young generation has been able to uh, instill that, I guess, way of learning and using the social media outlets or using technology. But I prefer the old school, like you.
It's better that way. The last 3 weeks we've had nine authors, and then five of those authors have gone on to be international bestsellers. I'm very, very happy through Hashmark Publishing. Now, I don't know anything about your book. Describe what your book is, and then were you self-published or you had a company that went through it?
Oh, I wasn't self-published. Austin McCauley is the name of the publishing house, and my book is about self-acceptance and living with mental illness. So I was 30 when I came out. So it talks about my struggles with identifying as LGBTQ and also my struggles and fighting the stigma against mental illness. Because when I came out, 3 days later, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So it's a double whammy. And, I'm Middle Eastern, and to be gay in the Middle Eastern culture is very taboo. And I was taught that it's disgraceful and a shame. And it really isolated me for a long time, where I suppressed my sexuality for many years because I had this fear that I'd be disowned or ostracized or like, and that feeling was very overwhelming. And it just, I'm sad to say that it took me 30 years to come out. When I look back, I wish I had the courage and strength at like 18 to be like, this is who I am, this is what I like. And I feel like my mental health probably wouldn't have suffered so much, because I had a complete psychotic episode. So what's interesting is when I came out and then 3 days later I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, my parents were like, oh, he has mental illness. So he's really not gay. It's just his illness makes him think that. And I had to explain it all over again. When the chemical imbalance balanced out of my brain, I had to come out again. I'm like, no, that's my truth. This is who I really am. And I just, you know what? I wish that people are afraid of what they don't know.
Yeah.
And they judge that, and and it's sometimes it's ignorance. Like, just educate yourself, because what bothers me about the stigma with mental illness is that people that have mental illness are viewed as crazy or violent, and that's far from the truth. I've had maybe one physical altercation my whole life. Like, I'm not a violent person. I don't go around fighting people, and it's just a mood disorder that I have. That's either I suffer from mania or depression. And with medication, I'm able to stabilize, and my mood are not as erratic. And I'm on a mission. Like, I want to make mental illness look so good that everyone wants it. And it's like, that's what I want to do with it. I'm tired of this. And like, especially like Hollywood, they sensationalize mental illness in a way that puts people in fear, and it puts a light on mental illness that really shouldn't shine because it's not the truth. I feel that when people are violent, I think it comes from their childhood. If they were surrounded in a violent child, like a home setting where, you know, there was physical abuse, and or they weren't taught to express their feelings, and there's all this aggression, I think that's what plays a part in you being violent or not. I don't think it's mental illness.
I agree on that. So did you were you born in Yonkers or you grew up in Yonkers?
I was born and raised
And then you went to
in
California.
Yonkers. Yes. No, I have family in California, so I write for Splash Worldwide, an online magazine that was first called LA Splash. So a lot of people think I'm from LA, um, but I'm born and raised and lived in New York. But I visited California about like 12 times. Beautiful weather there.
Well, so you're a typical New Yorker. And the reason why I was asking is a lot of times New Yorkers can't stand going to California. They just can't get it. And then sometimes I tell them it takes them 10 years to start to like it. And that's provided that they ever like it because you got everything in New York. You know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. But the other thing about that is the fact that you come out when you come out. It's kind of like it just happens. You know, there is a time for it, and everybody's got their individually about it. And then you got hit with 4 double whammies, not just 2 or 3. My God, my hat goes off to you because that's not easy being, you know, of the descent that you are. My God, I can only imagine what you probably went through and what you still maybe go through.
You know, since it's been 12 years since I came out, what's sad is I met other LGBTQ Arabs. And
Yes.
they had said to me, they're like, you know, you're like a hero to me. I wish I had the courage to come out, but they're still in fear. So they're still living that double life. And it hurts my heart because I'm not here to judge everyone. Like you said, it's a journey for one to come to self awareness and self acceptance. But it's just sad to me because I know their pain and I know their sorrow and I know that they feel like no one can understand, or they just have this fear that hovers and controls their choices. And but they tell me I give them hope that one day they'll have the courage and face their truth. And I feel like one of the reasons why I wrote the book is because I didn't have examples growing up of people that were gay and were doing their life, living their life and successful. I was just taught that, oh, that's the devil and you're going to burn in hell and like all this crazy nonsense. And then, and even with mental illness, like I was ignorant before I was diagnosed with mental illness because I believed what I read in the media about people with mental illness. I didn't realize they have it so wrong. And if I could just help change one life, then I'm happy. If I could inspire one person to just live their truth and not be in fear, or and self acceptance, you know, I think it's RuPaul that always says, before you love anyone, you got to love yourself. So how the hell in the world are you going to love anyone if you can't love yourself first? So that has to come into part. And I really have come to terms to where I'm proud of myself and I love myself and I'm confident in myself. It wasn't always there, but it is now, and that's what's important.
David, I'm proud of you that you said that, and it's an honor to meet you. Hearing all that,
Thank
because
you.
it's not easy. I mean, I have enough of my friends who are gay and lesbian and bisexual, and some of I mean, one of my writers on the movie side, Mike Szymanski, he came out the opposite. He had a girlfriend, and I believe he had a kid, and then he became gay. So he came opposite. So he had to deal with the stigma in the opposite order, if you can imagine that. Because they're like, you can't be gay if you had a kid, and then sexual. And he worked on the adult side of stuff. So you can imagine that. He's one of my good friends till this day, but he used to write for USA Today. He and I would do a lot of one-on-one interviews with a lot of celebrities around the world, and he's my movie guy when we talk about movies, and I'm more honored. And through him, I was able to meet Rue back in what 1996, And then on the adult side, he wrote as Mickey Ski on the gay side for stuff like AVN back in the day. So it was interesting learning a lot of these things like that, because I would see a lot of the adult performers who wanted to be an actor. So they thought that they would start doing adult films to get into acting. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. And I was the only one that would bring them a lot of times, because a lot of times, and I recognize it to this day, some of them, a lot of them suffered who might have been bipolar, OCD, ADHD, but didn't know about it in the 90s. And then you start to figure it out as time goes on. I mean, I remember going in over to the homes and actually getting them out of bed and putting them in the showers. And these were the girls I was dealing with. I'm like, what's wrong? And then I started to figure it out once they started to describe what it was. So I totally understand that. So I've always had to deal with that with my friends, and I'm really sympathetic and empathetic when it comes to that.
Oh, thank you. It's sad when a lot of people have to suffer and not know what's wrong, or not look for help or try to get help, because some people are ashamed to admit that they have a mental illness or that they have to take medication. So the journey's long, but I think that, and like you were saying, in regards to some people may have ADHD. What's interesting is that the reason why I had a psychotic episode is because I was on ADHD medication. So I thought I had a problem focusing. I didn't know I was bipolar. And I didn't know that the medicine Adderall that I was taking was for ADD. I thought it was just an appetite suppressant, because I went to my doctor and I said, I want to lose 10 pounds. So he gave me that. I had no idea that it's a drug to help ADD, and it worsens the condition of people that have bipolar disorder. So that's what happened to me. I went through a full-blown manic episode where I had psychosis. And it's like, to know that I lost my mind and got it psychotic episodes, and to realize that if I don't take my medication, I can't live a productive life. So I learned the hard way that I need to be on medication for the rest of my life. And there's no
Uh-oh, we lost you. Oh, there you are. David, can you hear me?
that. When someone's diabetic, they're not ashamed to say they take. So why should I feel ashamed of taking the medicine that helps me? Okay.
Well, here's the thing.
Hello?
How was it when you were locked down? How was that for you? How was it for your head at that point? How did you deal with that? Today is a year that happened.
It was very traumatizing, because when I went into it, so there I am in a room locked up, and just my thoughts, and I was out of touch with reality. So I was thinking all these crazy thoughts, and I was thinking I'm a messenger from God. And then I started to think, like, after the chemical imbalance balanced out, I said, I wonder if all these prophets in the world had mental illness and just thought they were getting a message from God, or they have some kind of psychosis. Like, I thought that, like, I really thought, like, could Jesus be someone that had psychosis too, and just was like talking about the message from God? Because it's interesting, the way science and religion are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, science has proven so much, and then in religion, it's just about having faith. There's no real evidence but faith. So that's very interesting to me.
What nationality are you again?
I'm Middle Eastern. My parents come from Jordan, but I'm not Muslim. I'm Greek Orthodox Christian.
But still, man, you've got 7, 8 things that you got to deal with right there alone. My God, I could only imagine. Were you living by yourself when the pandemic hit a year ago today?
Yeah.
Oh my God, how did you deal with that?
Well, it's crazy, because I didn't experience, like, a lot of people were having mental issues during that time. But interestingly enough, I think because I've been working on my mental health for so long, and I take medication, I was fine. Like, I did get a little bored here and there, but I was like, I'm fine. And I did go out once in a blue to, feed that urge of wanting to be out or be social. But then I would get worried because I have two older parents that I see, and I didn't want to bring anything back to them. But in
Yeah.
November, I actually did have COVID, and I had no symptoms except no appetite for 3 days.
Wow. Do you know how you probably got it at all?
So my brother, my brother had a baptism for his son, and he invited like 90 people, and they came to the.
Oh, I did hear about that. Eileen told me about that. Okay. And
So it's like,
no,
so
no, that
somebody
didn't
came,
happen.
someone had COVID at the reception, and it passed. It passed it on. But it was weird, is because they're saying that it's so many people have lost their lives. It's so sad, but it's so weird to have had it and felt no symptom except no appetite for 3 days.
Well, I also tell people this: you have to be aware, as we call it, the long termers, long haulers, because you don't know what will be. I mean, I've got a couple people, two of my co-hosts have had it, and they're in the world of fitness. So I said one had attached her kidney, the other one is just mental. She's going through her mental stuff, physically fit, but you know what? That's challenging on their side because they're used to going to the gym. That's the one thing that they're going to get in with. And I would always joke to them for years, what happens when you can't go to the gym one day? Because I knew this
Yeah.
was coming. Me and my partner knew this was coming as early as January 2018, but I started to figure out everything by May, and then October 2018, October 3rd of 2018, I sent out the first email kind of warning people, small businesses, hey, we want to help you. There's things that are starting to change, but how do you tell people there's a big, huge virus that just shuts down the world? We knew about
Yeah.
it, we just didn't know the name of it. So last year was our best year because we prepared for it. We had 2 years as we were done. We just didn't know what day it was going to hit. So for me, today is the official day that everybody was locked down. For me, it was February 2nd last year, but I started my lockdown September 23rd of 2019.
Oh,
That
wow.
started it. So I had already been announced. So that's why I say I start going back out within the next month because I'll be back in the studio because I wanted to do everything after April 15th. I'm kind of curious, cautious of them opening up too soon, but at the same time, how can you open the theater up April 1st when there's no big movies coming until the end of May? The early.
Yeah.
So cruise ships, what, you're going to start putting cruise ships back out there? So some of them have been vaccine, but now it doesn't work that way. Some of them won't take it and some of them are not sure, which goes into your book. When did you start writing your book?
I started writing my book 10 years ago. And I had to get comfortable because I talk about very personal details of my life. And I wasn't sure if I was comfortable at that sometimes. So sometimes I would write, and then months would go by and I wouldn't. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. And then I'd be like, what am I going to do? I'm going to put myself out there and the world, like out to the world, letting them know I have bipolar disorder and there's such a stigma. What if like someone that is going to hire me finds out about my book and it's like, oh, you have mental illness, not to hire me. So it's like I felt like I felt like I had that shame. And then I thought to myself, I said, you know what? You live life once. And I'd rather live my truth. And anyone that's going to be in my life is not going to care about whether I have mental illness or not. And if someone's going to care or be judgmental about it, I don't need them in my life. And that's the advice I gave myself. And I came to, like years later, it came into fruition. I published the book, and Austin Macaulay is the publishing house. They're from England and they have an office in New York, and they actually have an office in Dubai. So I was thinking maybe I should try to get my book published in Dubai, but it's a Muslim country and it's talking about sexuality. So I don't know how that would plan out.
Well, here's the thing on that. Why not? As you said, and as I know, there's a lot more of them, like yourself, who haven't and can't because of where they are. And you know that, and I know that too. So you are that inspiration, and I'm calling you that inspiration for those people like that. But the thing is, it is challenging. Man, I remember a couple movies. I think it was Sonia, the stoning of her coming out being gay, And I was like, wow, based on a true story, I'm like, it's very difficult and it is dangerous, you know, so I understand the stigma of that. But you could be that guiding light, but it is challenging, as you know.
You know what's interesting? Somebody that read the book said, David, this would be a great movie. What if you turn it into a movie and, and then have people reach out to you that way? Because there's no bigger form of, um, I guess, an outlet, like media outlet, like it is in film. Um, you can tell your story. And I thought about it and I said, maybe I'll write a screenplay about it and see if anyone would be interested. I have to say.
No, it's a good story. I have not seen that story yet, and I watched a lot of films. So I think that would be great because, like I said, you've got 8 things going on. I've seen as many as 6 things, but not 8. So you take the prize. So congratulations. So why
Thank
not?
you.
So here's the thing, David. Why not? You took 10 years to write it, and I tell people I was just interviewing a director before, who I interviewed 6 years ago, and I was telling him the progress that I have and where his film, where, and we were talking for 2 hours, and you know his film is world renowned now. But it was one of those things where why not? It's a great story. Who cares if it took you 10 years or 20 years? You still got it done. I'm telling these people,
Yeah.
your book, and they're like, oh, I don't have time. Who cares how long it takes? I can congratulate anybody who took the time to write a book, no matter how long it took. You got it done. Congratulations. You get 3 claps for that.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really enjoying this.
Oh no, it's one of those things where, like I said, I didn't know I was going to be talking to a lot of authors this year. It's something that and being and having them to come on a show because again, anybody who's written a book, I've never written a book. I only had a website last year, and I didn't create it. I didn't want one. My co-host did. So now we have a place to put all our stuff. But what I'm doing now, I'm putting these people that I like, such as you, I'm putting the books on our website for the whole world to see because it took a lot of time. You took that effort. I can only imagine mentally what that was probably right to do that, to take the time to write here and there. I know it's not easy.
Oh, it really is a struggle, but the feeling that you get once it's done is so amazing. Like I sometimes I feel like, oh, I compare my life, and that's it's not good to compare your life, but sometimes I would compare my life with like people in my life, my friends or my family, and I'm like, oh, they progressed so much, they did this, they did that, they did that. And then my friend was like, David, you're a published author. None of us can say that. So she's like, I understand that you feel how to write a book. Sometimes I have to really think about just my life and my journey and not compare it, because sometimes when I do compare it, I get a little sad, but then it's like I can't compare myself because it's not a reality to what I'm feeling, because who knows if they're even happy with what they've accomplished or not.
Yeah.
Everyone, like in a like we're all kind of raised in a way to um have have our own kind of facade or want to be viewed a certain way. And I remember there's this couple that I met, and I asked them, how did they meet in the beginning? And the guy goes, he goes, well, in the beginning, she didn't really meet me. She met my representative. So he was putting up like a wall. He wasn't really showing her who he is because he was trying to win her over. And then after he won her over, he let her really see who she was, who he was. And I'm like, and I thought to myself, I'm like, that is like too much work to try to put up a facade about, like, to be something that you're not, to get someone to like you. And then when they like you, tell them, well, this is who I really am. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, it's false. It's like false advertising.
It is actually. David, let me ask you this. What was it like not being able to go out to a nightclub to see your friends and just dance the night away? Because a lot of people would go dancing. It was basically their way of expressing, getting their fears, getting their emotion out. When those clubs shut down in New York and they were just getting together with friends, what was that like hearing from some of your friends?
Some of my friends were like in tears because they needed that outlet, that
Yeah.
release, and they weren't getting it. And the interesting thing with me is from the age of 22 to 30, I was out every night. I was in a party every night. I was out. So I kind of like, it kind of didn't phase me anymore. I was over the scene of being out because I partied so much. And when I say party, I don't mean drugs. I just mean I literally would go out and dance the night away. But some of my friends that still do have had a hard time because that was their release and it was no longer there. Virtual party would have like bingo night and everything. So they started doing virtually, but they would get like 10 people in a room in like a Zoom meeting and then like socialize that way. And it's interesting because I still see a therapist and we do virtual meetings, but I don't really like the feeling virtually. I want it in person. Like it's so much more profound when it's in person.
Yeah. I have my friend, Dr. Nancy Pierce. Her business has been the same. It's actually skyrocketed because she's doing more of the virtuals, but at the same time, she missed out because she would be going to hedonism. She would be doing her all nude things like that in Jamaica. And that part hit her. Everything else was still going good. But it was like not to be able to take the cruise, the travel part that hit her. And again, I was warning people about this. I'm like, something's going to happen. Be prepared. And how do you tell people you know what's going to happen when the world shuts down? They're going to think I'm nuts. So
Yeah.
that thing. So I did my best to tell them. I'm like, this is what I was telling you. I started telling you January 2019. This is going to happen. I'm on record for this stuff. We were at a workshop in Tennessee, June 19 of 2019. We had 2 million views then. We have 7 million views a day and counting, David. And at that point, so I'm going back and watching where we were to see how the growth was and seeing where everybody was. I didn't start my first Zoom until April 2nd. You're my 47th show this year. The year
Oh, wow.
started. I'm at 287, David. I'm on
Wow,
season.
that's amazing.
I went from skipping over season 1 to going to season 9, 10. Now you're on season 11, 286, number 44 of this year. Nobody
That's amazing.
Zoom interviews that I've had done in the world. Nobody. And I challenge
Wow.
the numbers up because you can see on my hashtag on my YouTube channel and all the shows that we've done. That blows my mind. But here's the thing: it's an outlet for people. It's a release for people. We all know what it's like to do this, and it's not like I'm not going to still continue it. We've never stopped doing our stuff in studio. We've never stopped doing our live shows. We've been rocking and rolling. 2020 was our best year. I only know 22 other people who can say that. All the people that I know around the world. That's not a lot of people. That's not enough.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you.
Well, some of it was from Eileen, my co-host. I have 11 co-hosts, actually 12 co-hosts. They're all women. So I champion women's right. My partners, is trans, so LGBT. That all that means a lot for me because I know what that's like. I'm not in your body, but I'm around that a lot, so I understand what it's like. So I can only imagine what it was like to be shut down and not be able to sometimes go and hug your friend or stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
understand that. That's one reason why I never said no to any interview. I've never said no to any interview, whether it was in person or not. I always wanted to be that guy that said, you know what? I took the time to take the time to interview that person. Look where they are now, and they become stars. That makes me happy where everybody said, oh, no, I can't sell that interview. Yeah, but why not just do the interview so you could say, hey, you interviewed them before they made it? I always thought that was more important.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
When you finished your book, did your parents ever read your book?
So the funny thing is I started reading the first chapter to my mom, and um, I was trying to see if I can get it written in Arabic because she doesn't read a lot in English, but they read in Arabic. Um, but sometimes she gets like as a mother, she's very protective, and she gets hurt with some of the things that I've shared, like because I talk about molestation and I talk about suppression and I talk about like all these different things. And as a mother, she just feels like she just wished that she could have protected me over things that she had no control over.
Right.
And it kind of is sad for her to know, especially with how I start the book. I start the book with like, if you tell anyone, I'll kill you. I was 4 years
Wow.
old, and those words were spoken to me. At 4, my life was threatened. My feelings turned numb, and I lived on, living dead awake. And like that was just like, and like my sister and my cousins and friends that have read it were just like, they're like, we totally have a different understanding of you now and why you are the way you are and who you are. And they're like, not a lot of people can go through what you've gone through and be strong enough to mend. Some people sadly want to end the pain and the suffering and just think suicide is the option only. And that's sad. Um, and you know what's interesting? I used to be fearful of people that had schizophrenia. And when I was in the psych ward and then I did outpatient, I met a girl named Rachel who had schizophrenia. And she was the sweetest girl I've ever met. And we were in a diner eating, and she was just, I have to go, I have to go. I'm like, why? She's like, everyone in the diner is talking about me. I'm like, that's not true. No one in the diner knows you. She's like, no, yes, they do. They're talking about me. They're telling me I'm fat. And I'm like, but that's not true. And I was like, David, don't continue to like, like egg her on, getting her upset. Just do what she wants. So I said, okay, what do you want to do? She's like, could we just leave? So we got up and left. And I started to realize like, they just, like most people with schizophrenia hear voices that tell them that they're no good, they're not good enough, and or they're not worthy. So I used to think that people with schizophrenia were like the dangerous people. Like, oh, they hear voices and they tell people to kill other people or do this. And that's not the reality of it. And it was like a lesson learned. And I was fortunate enough to be her friend and learn from her and learn more about schizophrenia and know that they suffer more than people with like bipolar disorder because they just constantly hear these voices that tell them they're no good. They're not good enough. They'll never amount to anything. Um, and I like, it's just, life is so fascinating because we live our lives and we try to aim for a goal and we want to accomplish the goal, and we do accomplish the goal, then we aim for another goal, and it's like we're constantly going and striving for more and more and more. And I felt like if you're never going to be content with what you have, then you're never going to be happy. And it doesn't mean don't look for more, but learn that happiness is something totally different than just accomplishing what your goals are. And so now I'm on this kick that we're like, I don't want to stress anything. I don't want, like, life is life. We're all visitors on this earth, and one day I won't be here, and it's not going to matter. So I don't want to stress over things, but I want to help and fight the stigma and help educate people about mental illness or about being gay and Middle Eastern and having a voice for Middle Eastern LGBTQ people or people with mental illness, like. Some of the greatest talent that we have, like even Mariah Carey, who I'm a big fan of, has bipolar disorder.
Exactly.
And what's interesting is that she came out with her memoir a month after I came out with my memoir, and I have bipolar disorder, but she didn't talk about having bipolar disorder. She talked about having post-traumatic stress disorder, but she didn't mention anything about the bipolar. And I thought to myself, like, could she possibly still be having, I guess, to feel okay with the stigma of having mental illness? Because, I mean, bipolar is not just some little kind of minute disease. It's like, it's a very serious disease. And I don't know, I felt weird. Not weird, I just felt a bit let down that she didn't talk about having bipolar
Well,
disorder.
I could tell you a little bit about that because remember the movie Glitter?
Yes, I was an extra in Glitter. I got to meet her in Glitter.
Well, I was supposed to do the interviews with her, and that's when she had her breakdown, if you remember. So and that's what, 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
at that point, we were supposed to interview her, and then she had a breakdown. So imagine what that's like. We didn't get a chance to interview her. So I knew then, and then I've always liked Nick Cannon, so I would always run into Nick. We would have a great time because he was doing America's Got Talent.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I don't think this is not going to work. What's Nick thinking about? I'm like, I don't think he knows what he's going to get himself into. Because yes, she can't talk about that because she still hasn't dealt with it, going back to before glitter. That's the answer. That's the real reason why. And
Yeah.
schizophrenia, people who do hear voices, yeah, they are hearing voices, but the voices are coming mumbled. So they can't discern everything. So they think it's all negative, and it may not be. So that's the other way of looking around at that. Because I've had people like that. I did, like you, I dealt with that. I would go out with them when I would learn, well, why do they do it? Like, they don't like crowds. It's better to have them out more in nature. Bring them around horses, just like I did with kids who are autistic, because horses like kids that are autistic. So I learned those things like that, and it was very, very interesting. So take this, the black guy who's really white, not black. I talk to proper. So in a way, I don't get headaches. I don't get sick. I would get run down. So I mean, it takes me 2 movies to get my energy back up because I'm go, 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 go. Like I'm doing all
Yeah.
this. I'm doing all this stuff. You put that all together. I'm the opposite of what you guys go through, but I'm like, no one knows what I really go through. What is it like to get headaches? I have never had one. What is it like to get migraines? I know my people who have migraines for days and have to go get knocked out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with me? And then I'm like, no, shake that feeling away, get rid of that. Don't even think about stuff like that. So I totally get what you're talking about, and I understand because we both have been around people like that, and it's very interesting. You get to know, and then you start to appreciate all this stuff. And again, my hat goes out to you because at least you got a chance to write it down. I haven't written my book yet. You have, so I can congratulate you on that.
Thank you. We got to get you going on your book. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting read.
I'm starting to work on it. I can't do what you did. I'm going to have someone help me to do that. It was always going to be the case because I'm not that writer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why
cool.
I'm talking to a lot of them now. And you know what? Your follow-up will be just as interesting. And yes, you should write your screenplay and you should do it now.
Thank you.
Absolutely. No, it's there. You know it's there. It's there. It's a good story. Oh, and we lost him. David, come back. All right. So until David comes back, we're talking to David about his book, and it's very interesting. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to see all the stuff that he's got in there. And the good thing about that is it'll be very interesting because of what he's created and what he's gone through. And here's David back again. So that's good.
Sorry, I lost you
as you were going.
Sorry.
That's okay. Give your social media links for everybody.
So everyone could reach me at David Roboti. Roboti's R for rabbit, A for apple, B for boy, A for apple, D for David, I for ice.com. And there's links to get my book from Barnes. There's a contact page and my there as well.
Say that last part again. You started breaking up. Where you can get your book.
You can get my book from barnesandnoble.com or Amazon. And there's also social media that you could find me on my website too. So again, davidroboti.com, and all the information's there.
All right. And David, as I always leave everybody, I always say this. If you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it. David, thank you for this. Hold on for a minute. I'm Brian Sebastian, and we will see you next